Tupac's cousin, basically in a nice, polite, kind of way, called Fat Ho out a liar, for running around spewing those lies that when Pac was behind the prison walls, that the Puerto Ricans pressed him, and then in thinking that Pac had beef with FatJoe, then Pac runs to the phone and calls him up, and gets the Puerto Rican cast off of his bumper. And from that point on out, the Puerto Ricans looked out for and protected Pac. And I could believe it because Fat Ho ain't nothing more than a liar. He was one of the main cats running around spewing the lie about the whole creation of hip hop thing being 50-50 between blacks and Latinos, which it wasn't. It was solely a FBA creation. And, Tupac's cousin gave, two main talking points as to why Pac wouldn't have needed, Puerto Rican cast or Latino cast to protect him behind those walls. And the first one is that, Pac's stepfather, Matulu Shakur, was a member of the Black Liberation Army. And the second one, his mother, Afeni Shakur, was a member of the Black Panther Party for self-defense. And, it's three reasons in all actuality I'm going to give. And the third one is, Latino cats, they don't rock with no black people behind them walls. They don't even rock with black people, in society, let alone behind those walls. You know what I mean? Because prison is one of the most segregated places on earth. Latinos stick with their own people. They don't so much look in a brother's direction. They all about their people. They, give a damn what goes on, amongst black people in that prison system. So I got the audio and the video of Tupac's cousin calling Fat Ho out to be a liar, which he is, and we gonna walk through and talk about it how we normally do, family. Fair use.
What's one of the biggest misconceptions about your cousin Tupac Shakur that you've heard from the media or people who've never met him?
Yeah, I've heard a lot of misconceptions about, particularly from people who never met him, because most of the people who, not most, but some of the people who I see talking about Tupac, by the way, let me say this, Pac is ubiquitous, like he's everywhere at the same time. He's all over social media, he's all over the news, he's on every social media platform all day, every day. And I'm noticing more and more people appearing on these podcasts talking about Tupac and their experiences with him. And, I'm not doubting that they're telling the truth, but I am hearing a lot of misconceptions. By the way, for instance, shout out to the person I'm about to mention, FatJoe. Shout out to FatJoe. Got a lot of respect for FatJoe. He's from the Bronx. I'm from the Bronx. I know what hood he's from. I know some of his OGs from his projects. I think he's from McKinley or Forest Projects. McKinley and Forest are right across the street. I know some of the people from there, his OG. So shout out to Joe. I don't have nothing against him. I like him as an artist. I think he's dope, he's thorough. But I have to disagree with something that he's been saying on podcasts about Pac calling him about some Puerto Ricans putting pressure on him in Clinton. Now, the reason why I'm questioning that, I'm not saying Joe is lying, I'm just questioning it. The reason why I'm questioning that is because I know how the Puerto Ricans roll in prison, right? I know how they roll.
Basically saying, but without really saying it, that Puerto Ricans don't rock with black people in that prison system. They stick with their own people. And let's continue.
And I know Joe is strong in New York with Puerto Ricans. I've been around Joe several times, and he got Puerto Ricans around him that'll hurt something. For real, right? So I know he got strength with Puerto Ricans, his people. But as far as Tupac being in prison and having to call Joe to keep the Puerto Ricans off his back because they think that he got beef with Joe in the street or some, I don't know about that. Mind you, I was going to visit Pac every month. If Pac was having problems with anybody in prison, I would have been the first to know about it. Not only would I have been the first to know about it, Watani would, you got to know, the people who are in prisons, who run the prisons, there's a lot of Puerto Ricans who do. Don't get me wrong. But a lot of people who run the prisons in the New York State penal system are people that we know. They people that love us. They family members, man. They people, yo, you get where I'm coming from?
Family, it's a lot of black, people from the Black Liberation Army and those Black Panther parties that's still in jail. They control it to a certain degree, and Pac would have been good just solely based off of his blackness, and I believe Pac, was a stand-up brother, who made it through prison unscathed. But if Pac needed help and reinforcements, he for sure as hell wouldn't have went to, the Latinos, the Puerto Rican cats. He would have went to the brothers to get it. But let's continue.
Right? Tupac wasn't in a prison where people was going to walk all over him. That wasn't going to be the situation. He was in prison with
because Pac's family is super heavy with that Black liberation and that Black Panther thing. Even Black folks that's in them gangs, Bloods and Crips, and even Black people that's in the corporate class that get up and got a briefcase every morning and sit down in the suit and tie. They respect the aspects of Black empowerment, the Liberation Army, and the Black Panther Party for self-defense and what they stood for. So not only in jail, but Pac was good anywhere he went. With his black card, his blackness, got Pac, because a lot of ways, because people respected Pac's family and what they stood for. So, Pac, that trickled on down to Pac, so he was able to get respect just based off of that. And the reason that messed Pac up to a certain degree is when he blurred the lines and got himself involved with the gang thing. But let's continue.
With people who were strong.
Absolutely.
That's what got Pac caught up, is when he put himself in the line of fire, messing around with those gangs. But Pac garnered a lot of respect just based off of his family's ties to the Black Panther Party, the Black Liberation Army, and being a part of our struggle of empowerment as Black people, truth be told.
Tupac didn't want our people protecting him. He refused when he first got into Clinton. There were people already with care packages for him. Like strong people, like legendary, like I'm talking about legend. They all in the newspapers, dude. Legendary. That is telling Pac, if you got problems.
And at this particular time, there was a lot of Black people still, from the struggle that was still living from the Black Panther Party and the Black Liberation Army still in those prisons. So Pac would have been good. Pac was a standalone cat, and I believe he stood on his own 2 feet and stood on business. But if he did need some help and reinforcement, he for sure as hell wasn't going to no Puerto Ricans and no Latinos. That's just Fat, Joe doing what a Tether does out here running around telling lies.
Let me know. I'm going to make sure that the CEOs know blah, 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 and this and that. And Pac telling them, nah, that's all right. I don't need none of you guys to help me with nothing. I'm good. I'm going to ride this on my own. And then the officers, knowing Pac's connection with some of the strongest people in Clinton, taking him out of population and putting him in segregation so that he don't incite anything in population. So that there's no chance of anybody trying to take advantage of this guy who is being watched by some of the strongest men in prison. Does that make sense to you? That some Puerto Ricans is going to put pressure on him so that Pac can call Joe, of all people, to tell him.
For sure as hell don't make sense to me, but let's continue.
There's people, does that make sense?
Well, like I said, everybody has their story. That's why I'm asking you this question. And the misconceptions and
yeah, but in closing, family, I don't think Pac needed anybody. He stood on his own 2 feet and he made it through prison unscathed. But if he would have needed some reinforcement and some, backup, he would have went to the brothers. He for sure as hell wouldn't have went to some mythological Puerto Rican alliance. And this is furthermore proof of why FatJoe ain't nothing more than a lying Latino tether, and he's not to be trusted. Just my thoughts on the matter. Peace.